everybody. I am Marina Malagudi, and I'm your host at Unbossed. Unbossed is a podcast I've created to highlight women with amazing paths of success here in Chicago. Last year, I set out to interview the only 40 female CTOs in the city, and this year I've expanded to female CEOs and women in politics and government in Chicago. I'm excited to share these interviews with you, and I hope you contact me at www.unbossed.io or email me at marina@unbossed.io. Hope to see you soon.
Jennifer Clark is Senior Vice President of Operational Excellence at Cresco Labs. She leads the organization's quality, environmental, health, and safety, and continuous improvement functions, ensuring that the company is delivering high-quality, safe, and consistent products to customers with cost-effective and efficient operations. She's a results-driven leader who builds highly effective teams and challenges the status quo to identify new and better ways to accomplish objectives. Prior to Cresco Labs, she led multiple operational aspects within the healthcare industry at Abbott and AbbVie. Jennifer graduated with a science degree from the University of Illinois, however, also attended the acclaimed Kendall College of Culinary Arts, owned a personal chef business for a short time, and is pursuing her Executive MBA from Kellogg School of Management starting in the fall of 2021. Jennifer serves as a mentor and role model for other women leaders, hosting events focused on themes of women empowering and giving back. In her free time, she enjoys cooking, traveling, playing tennis, spending time with family and friends. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hey everybody, this is Marina, your podcast host at Unbossed. I have the pleasure today to chat with Jennifer Clark, Senior Vice President Operational Excellence at Cresco Labs. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, Marina.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we touched base a little before, and I'm super excited about this interview because from my first impression of you was really that you're super energetic and a go-getter. So we're going to have a lot of awesome topics here. But before we get into the meat of things, we want to give our listeners a little bit of context about you. And so the question that I go to for this is, tell us a story about Jennifer as a little girl growing up. Give us some context about your life. And if you have an interesting story or a funny story about you, that it's plus, but not necessary.
Sure. Sounds good. So one story that I can think of that my parents often share about people was a story about me when I was in first grade. The teacher was going around the room and was asking all the students what their favorite foods were. And, you got the typical, mac and cheese, cheeseburgers, hot dogs. And when the teacher came around to me, my response was Alaskan king crab legs. Now, I do understand this probably came from a place of somewhat privilege, but I do think in some ways that response kind of signifies the path that I was going to take as an adult. I think in general, I'm usually trying to break stereotypes, break norms, and kind of think outside the box in a lot of ways. And so I think that story is very funny, but also very fitting for probably who I've become as an adult.
Nice. And do you remember what had you say king crab legs?
Well, I actually grew up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and there was actually this restaurant not far from our house. And on special occasions, when it was like a birthday or something like that, we were allowed to pick where we wanted to go out to dinner. And for some reason, I always picked this famous seafood place by us because I really enjoyed Alaskan king crab legs. So we did not eat it all the time, but it was something that was very special to me. And so for some reason, I was like, I'm not going to go with the norm. I'm going to break off and just do my own thing and talk about, my favorite food at the time, which was Alaskan king crab legs.
Nice. And now you are, like I said, you're a leader in Cresco Lab, which is, you can explain it better than I do, and I'll do a little bit of manufacturing for cannabis. Do you want to tell us a little bit, like, what did the company do? Just like the two, the high pitch elevator, and then your role at the company specifically?
Sure. We're what you call a vertically integrated operator, which is essentially means that we cover the three aspects in sort of the cannabis industry, which is growing of cannabis plants, largely agriculture, and then we process cannabis, meaning that we take that cannabis plant and we can turn it into extracted oils, so things you would see like in baked products. And then we also infuse that into other products, things such as lotion, capsules, as well as edible products, so chocolates, gummies. And then we also distribute those products and sell them at our retail dispensaries, which are retail dispensaries called Sunnyside. We are a multi-state operator and publicly traded. So when I first started the company, we were operating in just one state in Illinois. And now have expanded to multiple states from West Coast to the East Coast, and very much expanding. So when I started a little over 3 years, I head up our operational excellence department. I wear many different hats, and there has been some changes in kind of my responsibilities over the 3 years. As you can imagine, we're a very fast-paced startup environment with a lot of changes. But currently, I oversee our company's quality organization, so making sure our products are safe and high quality before they go out the door to our consumers. And in many states, our patients. And then I also oversee our H&S function, which is our environmental health and safety group, making sure our workplace environments are safe for our employees and our customers. And then I also oversee our continuous improvement group, which is probably more of a traditional operational excellence group. So it's a lot of process improvements, building efficiencies, etc.
That's really cool. And I was looking at your resume because I was thinking about like how does she know how to do all these things, and the reason why I was asking myself that was because let me get this right, but I think you got a degree in biology.
Correct.
And
it is
a passion for cooking.
Yes, that is correct. It is very interesting. I feel like a lot of people actually seek out cannabis, and in some ways I feel like cannabis sort of found me. So I was actually recruited into Cresco through an executive recruiter who I still am very close with. And I remember when she talked to me, she was like, oh my gosh, I feel like you're just this unicorn. Like you have all these aspects of things that correlate to the industry. And now in hindsight, being in the industry, I can see what she was talking about, because I think the thing that people don't realize and what I've loved the most about this job is there's so many different facets, right? Yes, my degree is in biology pre-med. There is a lot of science, a lot of technical aspects to it. I also do have a culinary degree from Kendall College of Culinary Arts. And for a while, owned a personal chef business. And so having that food background helps with our food production, making sure we're thinking about things like allergen management, avoiding cross-contamination, appropriate cleaning, sanitization. And then, I will say, because I love food, I also garden a little bit on the side. And I would say, even though I'm definitely not an expert in cultivation, I will say my gardening skills come in handy. But, having that wide range of operations experience in the healthcare industry, I worked at Abbott and AbbVie before, has really, really translated well over to the cannabis industry. And so I, can kind of tie all those pieces together to be successful in food.
Nice. I really like that because as I felt like in my professional career, as I've went through roles, sometimes I really didn't understand the connections.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever feel that way where you're like, now you're like, wow, that this makes a lot more sense, and if you realize, but what was it like going through all those semi-interconnected, maybe not so much things?
Yeah, that's actually, I can relate to it a lot, because I remember when I was at the point in my career at AbbVie where I was thinking about making a career move, I had a really difficult time trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do next. The time when I left, I was leading operations for one of our scientific divisions, and very similar to this role, I wore a lot of different hats. Probably what would be sort of a COO role at a smaller company. I was overseeing, outsourcing, budget management, compliance, technology ops. And there were a lot of different facets, and that's one of the things that I really loved about the role. It was very hard to get bored. But I was like, what am I going to do when I get to a next role? Like, am I looking for something in operations? Am I looking for something in technology operations? I feel like in a lot of ways, people feel like they have to pick one career path. Oh, there was a lot of project management as well, but I don't really see myself as one of those things. I really see it as a lot of different things. And actually, what was really helpful for me is I actually ended up working with someone. I was sort of seeking a career coach, but I wouldn't say she's necessarily a career coach, probably more like a life coach. And one of the exercises we did was kind of going through, like, what are your core values? Like, what are the things that make you, Jennifer Clark, tick? And really what we did through that, and it took me a while to kind of define, like, you really have like 5 or 6, or everyone really has 5 or 6 things that really define like where people draw energy and bring excitement into their life. And, I ultimately whittled my list down to 9, which I actually keep on my dresser. And every morning when I put on my watch and my wedding band and kind of start my day, I can look at these. And it sort of grounds myself into what's most important to me and what are the things that motivate me. And so really what it came down to is like, you just need to find a job, not necessarily like the job. Like, what is the company and a role that would check the box of these things, as opposed to trying to find like, it's just operations or it's just project management, etc. Because I was like, should I do something with food? Should I stay in healthcare, etc.? And it was more like, keep your options open, but really look for the qualities and the aspects. And I will say landing where I did really does check most, if not all, the boxes. And so that was really helpful for me. And, and what took me actually about 2 years to find the job. I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for like the job. So that was really helpful for me.
I love that. Can you tell us just a couple of them and see where you draw? What is it? Where you draw energy from? Is that how you?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you. I have some that have 2 stars, which are probably the key ones, and I have some secondary ones. So I'll tell you the 5 main ones. So I have autonomy, which is something that I have a lot of independence, freedom, and my husband knows me very well. He's like, "Oh no, you do not like to be restricted." So very true. Making a lasting positive impact. So something that I know will drive, change. An activist and pioneer. So I think in some ways those go hand in hand. So kind of driving for change, doing what you know is right, and pioneer is kind of paving the way, like what's uncharted waters or territory. A lot of people don't like the gray space. They like things more black and white and it's defined, and that is not me. I'm like, let me just give freedom to, roam, and I'll figure out a path along the way. And then the last one is creator. So really building something, kind of from scratch, whether that's, in this case, a company, teams, etc. But, something that will kind of leave a lasting impact and has a lot of creativity to it.
Beautiful. And give us a little bit of insights on, like, if you were to advise a mentee on how to find their 5 keywords. How did you go about it? How would you explain to go about it?
Yeah, so what I would recommend to start is to think back on different moments where you felt your happiest, right? And it could be something as mundane as, I remember telling the story that I went out to dinner by myself one night. No intentions. I needed some alone, like, think time. And I ended up having this really lovely conversation to start with a family that was sitting right next to me at the restaurant, or standing right next to me at the restaurant. It was a mother, father, and their son, and they were in town, Chicago, because he was just moving, like, post-college, and decided he wanted to stay in Chicago. So we're kind of getting him settled, et cetera, right? And we had this amazing conversation. We ended up sharing meals. This is pre-COVID. And I remember giving them a bunch of recommendations about like leagues to join, how I can meet other people. And I remember leaving for the evening saying, oh my gosh, it was just so fun, right? And part of it is you go in thinking your evening's going to be one thing and ends up being totally different, right? But it was like, I think starting with something like that and think about like, what was it that drew energy for you, right? For me, it was, autonomy, like me going out to dinner by myself and feeling very comfortable. Like I think as women, we feel like, oh, if someone sees I'm eating by myself, it must be I like don't have any friends or, and it's like, I actually love that. Like I feel very comfortable going to a movie by myself, traveling by myself, etc. I think also, thinking about that leaving a lasting impact. I remember them thinking, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. Like our son is trying to meet new people and you gave us all these tools and like how he could join some sports leagues or whatever it was to meet people. One of the things I didn't talk about is my secondary is like sense of adventure, right? You go out with the evening thinking it was one thing and it ends up being totally different, but that adds to the fun of the evening, right? And so I think if you like keep drilling down and chipping away is like, what are these common things? And for a while, I'd start with something like, well, I love to learn new things. And it's kind of like, well, why do you love to learn new things? Well, it's because and you kind of keep asking yourself, well, why is it that you like to do that? Why is it that you like to do that? And you'll find that they eventually all end up pointing to the exact same things. And I think that's a way to whittle down the list. But I would say, just throw out whatever comes to mind first. I probably had like 20. And then between those two exercises of thinking about experience and keep asking yourself, well, why do you like to learn or why is it? And you drill down, you'll eventually, see a common path.
Nice. Well said. Just like as a great green belt, Lean Six Sigma person.
Yes, that is true. It's coming in handy in all different ways.
The 5 whys are coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great tool that can definitely help a lot of people find whether it's the next position or the next thing they want to do, or even to determine whether they're at a role that suits them at all and they have to make a decision about staying or leaving. It's important to know.
For sure. And I think not only professionally, I mean, even personally, right? When I think, I'm in a little bit of a lull and I think about why. A lot of times it's going back to these same things, like where I'm missing this aspect, right? Even during COVID, I'm sure we've all had our ups and downs sort of riding the pandemic wave. And for me, it's like I am a person who I draw a lot of energy from other people. I like a sense of adventure. I like to meet new people, which is also on this people connector, right? And so when you don't have those things, which is hard during COVID, right? You're in lockdown, you're at home, you're not meeting new people. It's not like I'm, doing a lot of adventurous things. And so you have to find new ways to find those. And so I think it's a good way just to keep yourself motivated and to kind of keep coming back to these, throughout, whether it's personal or I guess professionally too. And understand how you think and what you need to feel your fullest.
Yeah, like I totally agree. I started a podcast because I didn't feel like I was connected anymore, and I wanted more connection.
Oh, that's great. I was wondering if you started this during COVID or not. So that's great.
2020. It was the perfect year.
That's great. That's great. Good for you.
But I also hear that some people think that you may be a show host one day. The next.
Yes, I did actually. I was seeing a counselor for a little bit when I was going through some life changes, and I think at that point I may have also been thinking about kind of a next career move, which that's actually at the point when I ended up going to culinary school instead of making a full career change. It certainly obviously has come in handy now. But he did mention to me, have you ever thought about, starting your own talk show? And I was like, no, that has definitely not been on the list. And he's like, I just feel like you have such this bubbly personality and people feel really comfortable speaking with you. He's like, I could definitely see you hosting your own talk show someday. So who knows? Maybe another future career for you.
They're all going to come together at the end of the day.
Exactly.
I find like a lot of us have this like pivotal moment of like what is it? Is it like sometimes it feels like it's boredom, or I've exhausted my role, and or something else, and it just incites like a change, right? And I have to say that I'm really impressed on how bold your your choices have been. Most people would be like, I'm just gonna, instead of being in a company downtown, I'm gonna join a company in the suburbs, kind of thing, right? Where it's not that bold of a move. And it just keeps me wondering, is like, what makes it so for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think, you kind of talked about that pivotal moment. And, I think I had one of those when I was around 30. Mm-hmm. So I was previously married, and, realized that I was at this point in my marriage that I was unhappy and really trying to make a determination, am I staying? Am I going? And all these things that, people go through. It's a very big decision, right, to make. And, I think that individual that I was talking about that I went to see his counselor for a while, Ed is his name, was really helpful in kind of giving me the confidence I needed to make that change. I think in hindsight, in my heart, I knew it wasn't right for me. But it's so hard, especially sometimes as women. I think we second guess sometimes we want to make the right decision. We don't want to hurt other people. And so a lot of times I think we think about what should I do, not what do I want to do. And I will say I grew up in a very conservative household. I'm half Asian. My mom was a very, typical tiger mom. And so in a lot of ways, I grew up as a child in sort of this, like, always trying to be perfect in some ways, right? What's the right thing to do, or what should I be doing? And I think I really realized at that moment when I was, 30, and I had this aha moment that, I knew that my parents were going to be upset. I was worried about what other people might think, etc. I was worried about hurting the person that I was, knew that if I split, I was going to be, hurting his feelings. But I really realized, and actually I remember the critical question that was on the table that really got me to finally be like, okay, I need to leave, is, he had asked me something like, okay, in 2 or 3 years from now, if you decide to stay, what do you think your life would look like? Where will you be? Where will you be working? Will you be living? What will you be doing? And I kind of went through like where I thought things would be. And then he said, okay, well, if you decide to leave and it's 2 or 3 years from now, what do you think you'll be doing? And I'm like, wow, never really even thought about this. And I was like, well, maybe I will actually go back to culinary school, and maybe I'll move back into the city. And, I've always wanted this like sports car, but I just figured I was going to have kids at some point. And so I had this image like, oh, I have to drive the SUV or the, minivan or whatever it is, right? I'm like, maybe I'll actually buy that, 2-door sports car that doesn't make sense now. But I could sense like this spark in this energy of like
excitement.
Yes, the unlimited possibilities of these things that I could do. And I really knew at that moment that in my heart, I needed to leave. But I think after going through that experience, I was like, I don't ever want to do anything with regret. And so I think it really sort of unleashed the openings. When you're a 30-year-old woman and you are now deciding to become single, when a lot of your friends are getting married and having kids, etc., and when you're coming in with the notion of like, you know what? If I never find someone else again, I am perfectly happy being single. I think it really changes your perspective that you're like, I really can do anything that I want and for myself. And so I think that really was critical for me of like, you should live what you want to do, follow your dreams, even if they're outside the norm, etc. And I ended up buying that car. And I actually bought a different car when I had kids, and that's a different story. But, I think I was like, that was really the pivotal moment for me of just like breaking those molds and norms. And thankfully I now am remarried, and my husband is super supportive, and he knows I'm a free spirit. So he has been very great of just like letting me do my thing, which has been great.
That is an amazing story, and I wanted to tell you that we're way more similar than you may think. This interview is not about me, but I've gone through similar experiences myself, and I completely relate to what you're saying. I love the question of what does your life look in 2 to 3 years if you stay? What does your life look like in 2 to 3 years if you don't stay? I think it gives a lot of perspective. I didn't think about it, and it could be applied to a career as well. Like, what does it look like for your career if you stay 2 or 3 years longer in this job, or if you left to find something else? And I hope people can take that and run with it, because it's important to, like you said, do what we want to do versus what we should.
Yes, for sure. And, I think even, throughout my life since then, whether it was, taking that leap and starting in the cannabis industry, where people were like, oh my gosh, what's that going to look like in your resume later, though, if you leave, you're trying to get another job outside of cannabis if you leave in the future. And I'm like, yeah, but, I'm willing to take those risks. And now it's like everyone's trying to come into cannabis and trying to get in, right? Where I sort of decided to take that risk over 3 years ago when it was much different times. And I'm like, I don't know, I'll figure it out, right? It's like, I think this is the right thing to do. And I'm always a strong believer of things happen the way they're meant to be. And sometimes you don't see it at the time. Like, even thinking about my divorce, even though I didn't see it at the time, and it was a really difficult challenge to go through, I think I needed to go through that to unleash some other things or unlock some other things in the future. So, I didn't see it at the time, but I can see now how it actually was very helpful in some ways, to really create who I am and really sort of allow me to be my authentic self.
Beautiful.
Years later.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a beautiful message for everybody who's listening. And I feel just energized just by hearing you telling this story. So thank you so much. Let's pivot quick, because last time we talked about your superpower, and I'm so curious about it. And I think you told me something like, I don't know if you know this is your superpower, but I think I felt like it was your superpower. But you told me you can build things from scratch. And you can take a thing and that it's unknown and it's gray and it really doesn't know where it's going, but you can like make it into something and take an idea and run with it and make it work.
Yeah, I would say so. So, over the last probably 3 roles that I've had, whether it was back in, healthcare or at my current role, at Cresco, I think, a lot of times people have these ideas and concepts and they don't know how to bring it to life or how to get it sort of over the finish line. And I think one thing, in some ways, I almost see my job as like, I'm just a creator, right? You tell me something's broken, it doesn't work, it doesn't exist. It's like, how do you take this concept or idea and bring it to life? And I think that theme has been very present in a lot of the roles that I've taken over the last probably 3 roles that I've had. Or even in, my personal life, it's, and in some ways helping other people too, right? Like, I have this idea, but I don't know where to start. And it's like, okay, we're just going to dig in and we're going to figure this out together, right? And then hopefully you can share those experiences with other people who are kind of struggling with the same things. But it's like, how do you make sense out of the chaos? So like maybe one example, maybe outside my life. So my son, he's now almost 8, but when he was 7 months old, he ended up going to the emergency room because he ended up having food allergies. And, over that first year, we had, a lot of challenges trying to figure out what exactly he was allergic to and just how to navigate, right? And I kind of went in with the notion of, like most things, I don't want this to hinder my son, right? I think in a lot of ways we think about how do I protect him and make sure he's safe, and that is true. But I was also like, I don't want you to see this as something that's hindering you from doing things in life, right? I want you to more figure out how do you navigate this successfully, but not let it hold you back. right? And so we really tried to put in, I mean, it probably helps that I'm in operations, which is probably why I'm actually in the career. But we put together all these systems. I know, I know for some folks they're more comfortable with, eliminating all the foods from the house that are, allergic, etc. Everyone has to do what they feel comfortable with, for sure, first and foremost. But for me, I was like, no, I know it exists out there, and I can't protect him forever. And so I feel like for me, it felt better to keep it in the house, but for him to understand how to navigate. So we had a special system where we had his food on one shelf. When we come home, we look at the ingredients, and we had a system where we write the words okay on the ingredients. So when he got old enough, he could, as long as it said okay, he knew he could grab it, right? It helped him babysitter, etc. But we put together kind of all these systems in some ways. But again, it was sort of like, how do you tackle this head on and make it work for you? And hopefully, we were able to help a lot of other people. I actually had a blog for a while on this. And as other friends found out they had kids who had allergies or had celiac disease or whatever it may be, I was trying to bring those experiences that we had to other people who, were, as you can imagine, it's overwhelming, it's emotional, right? And just like, how are you able to do that? And we've been able to travel, go places with him, have him do overnights, etc., and just more how to tackle it and navigate it.
Yeah, it's almost as if he was empowered to take ownership.
Yes, and he's very, he's only, like I said, he's almost 8 now. But even at a very young age, part of it is like, how do you advocate for yourself, right? Because other people are not going to do that. And that's very important for both my kids, especially my daughter. When they go to the doctor, I feel like a lot of times they talk to the parents, especially at this age, right? They're almost 8. My other child, my daughter's 10. And I find they always talk to me as the parent, like, what's their name? How old are they? I'm like, my kids are in 2nd and 4th grade. They are the patient. And so I'll kind of just turn and say, okay, take it away, Kate. And they'll say how old they are, etc. I always say, come prepared with questions, right? It's your body, it's your health. You need to ask them about things that you're not sure about, you want to know about. I want them to practice now at a young age so that when they're older, they feel comfortable and confident asking those questions, and asking things. Of course, I usually follow up with my questions too, but I always let them sort of pave the way first. And I think that's an very important skill to learn at a young age, whether it's, food allergies or other things, and to make sure our kids feel very empowered to advocate for themselves.
Thank you for that. Let me pause you quick because you're cutting in and out a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, let's try that. I think I can hear you better now. Did you change something?
No, I'm hearing like a little bit of almost, it sounds like wind or something in the background, but I didn't change anything. Let me see.
Okay.
See my Wi-Fi. Still looks like I'm full bars, but.
Perfect. As long as you're full bars, we'll figure it out. No worries. But I wanted to give a second for the thing to buffer if you needed to catch up with us.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll line it up for you again.
Okay.
All right, Jennifer. Thank you for that story. I like how you build out this system. What are some of the key things that you do in order to bring something to life as an operational leader?
So I think the first thing that I always start with is asking, myself or other stakeholders, what is the problem we're trying to solve? I think it's really important that we gain alignment on what are the issues and why does something need to be created or fixed or improved. Because that really gains a lot of insight from folks. And in some ways, it gets buy-in for change. Some people are very resistant to change. But if it's not, we're just making change for change's sake here. But really, we're trying to tackle or solve something that needs to be improved. It also gives people an opportunity to sort of air the things that they need to, and say like, this is not working well, or because we don't have this, causing a lot of frustration or chaos or confusion. People don't understand purpose or roles and responsibilities or whatever it may be, right? So I think it's really important to say, where are we starting from? And then asking people, like, what does ideal look like, right? If we were to tackle this and solve it in the right way, what could this look like? And so in some ways it gives you a guide of like, where are we now and where would we want to be? And sometimes people don't exactly know, right? They just know something's not working. They don't really have this vision of where it is later. And that's okay. In some ways it starts more like a brainstorm session, but it really just kind of puts the bookends together of where are we going, right?
Yeah.
I think if you have those anchors, how you get from A to Z, there's many different paths, right? Yeah. But at least the team is very focused on where are we going from and to, and we'll figure out how to get there along the way. Bringing in different experts and really starting to like map out what that looks like and how do we get there. But it gives you a way just to kind of anchor, I guess, the starting process.
Nice. And do you use any type of visuals or for your organization or reminders about the bookends so that people get reminded constantly about where are we going?
I am a huge fan of charters and not these massive, 10, 15 page charters, right? Just one page visual, and my team knows that I'm on them all the time. But I think it's so important before you're putting all this time and effort in, et cetera, to really ground everyone. And we have kind of like a one-page, very visual template that we use that says, what's the business problem we're trying to solve? Where are we trying to get to? What are the measurable objectives, right? So if we do this, what's the return on investment? Like, is this a cultural thing? Is this a cost savings effort? Is it operational efficiency? I think it's really good to make sure you have all the right stakeholders too. So saying like who needs to be a part of this project team allows you to make sure that you haven't missed anyone along the way, because getting that buy-in and support is so critical to any effort that you're undertaking. And I think just having a rough idea, right, how much it's going to cost, timeline, and then what's your overall project approach and how are you going to tackle this? And sometimes you don't know it, and that can evolve over time. But at least you can say kind of, how are we going to go about this? Kind of anything scope it, I would say also. What's in or out of scope? But, very quick, fit on one page and just start as a conversation tool is very helpful, because there's nothing more frustrating than you get all the way to the end. People are very excited about what they've delivered, and you're like, that's great, but go back to your problem statement. Like, does this solution actually fix what you're originally intending it to be, right? And so I think it's a good way to always keep coming back to it, especially when teams start getting off track or lose focus, and try to re-ground everyone again.
Nice. Solving for the wrong problem.
Yes, and we've all been there, right? It's frustrating when you're the person working on it, and sometimes it's frustrating when you're the stakeholder and you're like, what is this? So it's a good way to get that buy-in up front, and it saves a lot of time and energy on the back end.
Yeah, which takes me to a little bit of a different topic, but something about comes up for me that there for the future of work and how we work. What have you experienced in your company or in your industry given COVID? How are things changing for you, if at all? Are people trying to go back to the office? Are they staying home? What's happening?
Yeah, I would say there's a little bit of both. I think, some people who have been working remotely for a while, and, our business too has different facets, right? We have folks who work at our headquarter corporate office in Chicago, but the majority of the folks in my company have been out, away from their homes this entire time during COVID, right? We have many retail dispensary employees who are working in our retail dispensary, making sure people have both medicinal as well as adult use product. And then we have the folks in our manufacturing facility, you know, we haven't been down for a day since COVID started. And so they really have been, you know, essential workers, helping to get, you know, cannabis products out, because, you know, a lot of people need it for well-being as well as, you know, for medical reasons too.
Yeah.
I would say for some of the folks who are in a position to be able to work from home, you know, you are seeing both, right? Some people are, I love working from home. I'm way more productive. I don't have that 2+ hour commute. I actually can get more done being at home. And I think in some ways they'll probably continue working from home as they are able. And then there are other folks that are just, you know, clamoring to get back into the office. And so I've definitely seen an uptick in people kind of going back into our corporate office over the last, you know, few weeks here. But I think if anything, you know, I've always been a believer again of make the impossible possible, right? I've always believed, look, I care about, are the people on my team happy? And are they getting the work done, right? But people get the work done in many different ways. So it's kind of that A to Z thing, right? Here's where we are and here's where we're going. Whether you're working from home, in the office, in the morning and evenings, like, I don't care how you need to work. I mean, I'm a working mom. I have 2 kids. I know I work differently than some of my coworkers. But part of this, you have to find what works for you. And I feel like as a leader, it's up for me to help, you know, individuals find how they work best and help support it, right? Mm-hmm. We all have to be clear on what the goals are, objectives, what we need to deliver, but how and where you deliver it, I don't necessarily, you know, care about the location, I would say. But I'm hoping that with COVID, that other people will also kind of catch on and have those same mentalities about, you know, just making sure that we're productive, but that people feel they're working at their best, you know, whether that is at home or in the office.
Absolutely.
As the job allows, of course.
Yeah, of course, of course. All right. Is there any advice that you would give your younger self about your professional career and the changes that you've done and or pursuing leadership roles specifically for those women that are looking to level up and get that promotion that they've been seeking?
Sure. I would say 2 things that I wish I would have known, you know, younger in my career. So one is, we kind of talked about, with regards to my children, about sort of advocating for themselves. But I think as women, it's really, really critical in our careers that we have to also advocate for ourselves. And what I mean by that is, you know, like I said, I grew up in a half Asian household, and I think my mom had very traditional views of sort of what success was. It's like, you get A's, you know, you get good grades. And in some ways, the mentality was almost, if you get good grades, opportunities will come. And I do think that works to a certain extent. I think when I first started my career, I was like, oh, if I could do a really good job, and I'm present, and I show up, like, people will recognize me, and I'll get that promotion, or I'll get a pay increase. But in some ways, that's a very passive approach. Mm-hmm. What I think I recognized much later was, if you don't really say, this is what I want, or this is where I want to get to, there are going to be other people who are doing that, who are going to start moving ahead of you. And I think I really had that aha moment when I was in a role and we were kind of creating this new organization. I was helping to create the new organization, what it was going to look like, how work was going to flow through, you know, who were the people that were going to be there. But I remember thinking, I want one of those manager roles. And at that point, I'd kind of been a lead, a supervisor, but I was really trying to get my first manager role, right? And I kind of put together this list of like why I was a great fit. I set up time at the time to talk with the director who was going to head up the role. And it was very nerve-wracking for me, right? I was very much younger in my career. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm setting up time with this guy. I know he's really busy. But I, you know, went in his office. I'm like, hey, I know we're creating this new structure. I really want this role. And here's the reason why I think I'm a great fit for it. And when they decided on kind of who are those leaders that were going to be in charge of that group, I was the person, I basically got that role that I'd advocated for, right?
Nice.
But it really recognized, I'm like, if I had not talked to him, one, he would have never known that I really wanted it, right? It probably would have gone to someone else, or I probably would have just been passed over, right? And I think that really made me realize, like, oh, wow, I haven't been going about this the very wrong way. It's like I was taking this sort of passive approach and this sort of old school of, like, do a good job and people recognize me, versus a very active role. Like, no, you need to tell people, hey, I'm a director. I'm looking to get to a VP role. What do I need to do, right? Or I really want this job specifically. Here's why I think I'm a good candidate. Or what do I need to close out skills or round out my experience, et cetera, to get for it? You have to have those discussions and kind of have those like mentors and allies who are going to help pull you forward, because no one's going to do it for you. I think the other thing I would say, also probably more in relation to my upbringing, and sort of I talked about like feeling like at some point I had to be sort of perfect, if you will, is, I probably in my younger career wasn't a risk taker. If I didn't feel like I could do the role, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to apply for that because it might be a failure. And I think part of it is for women is like, get comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Don't worry about trying to be perfect. Don't worry about failing. Sort of take that leap, or as I called it, like a calculated leap, right? Obviously, if you have no experience whatsoever, you may fail. But it's like, what is that realistic leap? And sort of go for those roles that feel uncomfortable for you. You will, you might make some mistakes along the way, but you're going to learn a hell of a lot, and you will be very successful. And I think happy that you took that risk and kind of pushed yourself to the next limit or level.
Nice. Beautiful. I like that a lot. There's a lot of advice recently about advocating for yourself and for the things you want. And if you don't speak up, like one of the things that I think as a mentor, younger women, is like, if I speak up, I'm worried that I'm going to get reprimanded, or I'm going to get fired, or I am going 3 levels above. That's a skip level. How is my manager going to feel about that? What would you say about those worries?
Yeah, I would say, some of it is, you do have to be realistic, right? Yeah. So I think, if you're working within the confines of like, okay, this isn't totally out in left field, I think you have to make those bold moves, right? And I also think later in my career, I also got to the point, and I understand it's different when you're first starting, you don't have a lot of work experience, you're trying to prove yourself. I think I am at the point now in my career, and I think everyone will eventually, at some point hopefully get there, where you also have to say, I'm really valuable and I'm worth something. If this is something that's going to set someone off or be sort of the end of my career here because I misstepped, then like, is that really the place for you, right? Mm-hmm. You really want an environment and a culture where you feel supported, you take those risks, and those are embraced, not sort of frowned upon, because I think that really kills sort of culture, creativity, people taking risks. And, I think if you go in with that approach in some ways, you can, what's what I'm looking for? You won't be held back for something you're afraid might happen that probably has very little risk of actually happening, right? Yeah. And if it does, again, is that the best fit for where you want to be working or for whom you want to be working for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's similar advice to what I give. In addition to that, I tell them that you'll never know until you try. So,
yes, I say that all the time.
Try it out. You'll never know.
Yes, I'm very supportive of that phrase.
Well, believe it or not, we are at time. And I have a few outros questions, and then unfortunately, I will see you next time when you come back to the podcast. So it's all right.
For sure.
So what is one thing that we don't know about you that you may want to share?
So I would say one thing that not a lot of people know about me.
I want to know about with the sports car, by the way.
Oh, the sports car. Okay, so when
also give me the one you were thinking about if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So, the sports car one is, so when my kids were 3 and 5,
yeah,
I really, really wanted a convertible. I've always wanted to drive a convertible, but I was like, this is ridiculous. I have 2 kids in a baby car seat, not even a booster at the time, right? And most convertibles are 2-door cars. I don't think they actually make any 4-doors. I've had some for a while, but nothing I think that's on market right now. And I knew that this was very, very ridiculous and impractical idea, but I'm like, I really want one, and I'm gonna get one, you know. So I went to the dealer, and I remember waiting out in the parking lot for the gentleman to come and kind of do a walkthrough of my car, you know, show me all the buttons, how everything works. And I had moved the car seats from my old car to the new car, and the top was down, and there was a gentleman who was coming across the parking lot and said, now that's something I've never seen before. And I said, what? And he's like, a convertible with 2 small children? And I was like, you're damn right this is. You know, like, and I feel like I was like, yes, this is for all those women out there who have young children who always wanted to get that convertible. Like, this is for you. And so actually that year I was buying myself something for my birthday. And so that year I actually got a personalized license plate, which I never thought I would do. But actually on the license plate it says live life. So part of it is do what you want to do, live life to your fullest. And every time I get in my car, if someone makes a comment about that, you know, my car, which I still have, I'm like, yes, this is for all the women out there who want to do something and feel like they shouldn't, and you're just going to do it anyways. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. Thank you for that. What is a book or a resource or a podcast you have gifted the most or you want to recommend for our listeners?
Oh man, there's actually several books that I've gifted many times, but I would say there's this book called The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin.
Yes.
Who also is one of my favorite podcast hosts. Yes, happier. But it's really insightful. There basically is a quiz, and I know that you're like, oh yeah, I know it. There's a quiz that you take that basically talks about kind of what motivates you or what kind of drives you. There's 4 different things: an upholder, a questioner, a rebel, and an obliger. And basically by knowing what type you are, it's a way to get yourself to motivate to do something. So yes. An example would be, you know, I used to run all the time when I was on my high school track team. And now it's like so much energy for me to go outside and just go for like a 5-minute run, right? And so that may work for someone who's, and I forget if it's oblige or upholder, but like who makes commitments and sticks to them with external influence, right? If you tell a friend, okay, I'm going to go running tomorrow with you, you're going to show up, right? But if you tell yourself, I'm going to go running tomorrow, it's like tomorrow may come and go and you just never know. So it's kind of understanding where you fit, and then you use that framework to understand how to motivate yourself. Which I'm curious, since you know it, do you have any idea what I might be?
What you may be? I wanted to say, I was like, what I don't
talk today.
No, but I thought maybe you may be a little bit like me, a rebel, where you cannot force yourself to do it, but you have to trick yourself into doing that.
Yes, the rebel. Yeah. The phrase I love about the rebel is, you can't make me do it, and I can't make me do it either, which is so true, right? I have these great intentions. I go to bed, and I'm like, okay, tomorrow morning, I'm waking up early, I'm doing yoga before I start work, whatever. And then tomorrow comes, and I wake up, and I'm like, oh, but I don't want to today. I want to do this, and I want to do that, right? So it's like, you can't make me, and I can't make myself either. So you're a rebel too?
Yeah, I'm a rebel too, and the way it comes up for me is like, I would set up like a goal on my phone that says like drink water, and I set up an alarm, and I know I set it out because I want to drink more water, but when the alarm sounds, I'm like, you don't know me. You're not the boss of me.
Oh, totally. I know that very well. That's why you have a podcast called Unbossed.
That is totally why. I'm like, you're not the boss of me. Talking to myself.
Yes,
you're not the boss of me.
Very well. Oh man, yes. I know that feeling very well. I say that to myself a lot too.
I love it.
We have the longest chapter in that book too, right? Because we need the most work.
It was such a good chapter. I suggest if you identify with the rebel spirit, please go read it. It was so good.
Oh yes, definitely.
What is a book you would write?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've actually wanted to write a book for many years, but I'm like, maybe someday I will. I think it's probably around sort of that, we talked about kind of that pivotal moment in my life when I realized like I've got to start living for me and not these things that other people are telling me like how to be or how I should be. And so, for me, it happened to be divorce, but I know for many people it's different things. But I'd love to write a book that kind of serves as a platform for women to like go after those things that you felt like you shouldn't do or weren't able to do, like buying that 2-door convertible, when you have a kid who's only 3 and 5. If there's kind of a will, there's a way. So like make them possible. Don't let that set you back because you're nervous or feel like you shouldn't do something. If you want to do it, carve out that path. And
Nice. Amazing. Thank you. And anything that you have coming up, anything that you want the audience to know where to find you?
Sure. Well, let's see. I'm going to be speaking in November at the Global Cannabis Executive Summit.
Whoa.
Up into Toronto. Hopefully the borders will be open by then. We have a few months. We'll wait and see. So I will be talking about operational excellence, how to use key performance indicators to drive results and change. And also exciting, I'm actually going to be starting school in the fall. I'll be starting at Northwestern Kellogg School of Management and getting my Executive MBA, which I'm very, very excited to start. So excited to join the Kellogg community as well. So anyone who's out there who also went to Northwestern, joining the team there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming. Thank you for being
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. It was really great having our discussion today.
Great. We'll chat soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks. Bye.